Hi, I'm Selena. 3 months ago, my grandfather gifted me a beach mansion. Or so he thought. At my engagement party, he asked, right in front of everyone, if I was living comfortably there. I froze. Then answered, "What mansion?" That moment, it cracked open everything they'd tried to bury. The lies, the greed, the years of being erased. And me? I stopped pretending. What came next wasn't revenge. It was justice. Have you ever found out the people you trusted the most were stealing your future? Stick with me. This story doesn't end the way they planned. Before we begin, what time are you listening and where from? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. The sky had that soft golden haze that only came in early summer, just before the light started to fade and the vineyard turned quiet. If I squinted, I could see the edge of the ocean down the hill, past rows of grapes and guests in linen dresses, pastel shirts, champagne flutes glittering in hand. This was supposed to be my engagement party. My mother kept calling it the moment we celebrate you, but somehow I felt more like a placeholder. A centerpiece, maybe. Dressed in sage green, hair done in soft waves, smile pinned up carefully like a brooch. David, ever the charmer, stood beside me talking to Kyle, who had a way of dominating any room he entered, whether or not he was invited to. My father introduced me to the Morellis from the wine board. "This is our daughter," he said. No name, just daughter. As if I were interchangeable. As if my name had no weight. The music swelled, soft jazz, and the hum of conversations continued. My mother floated by, adjusting place cards and making sure every fork was at just the right angle. I caught her glancing my way. Not warmly, just checking. David leaned in and whispered, "You look stunning tonight." I nodded, but my gaze flicked toward Kyle. He was laughing with his wine glass lifted, comfortably seated next to David's chair, the seat I'd chosen for myself. Funny how that happened. Last week, I'd overheard something in passing. My parents talking near the study. Something about a coastal property. I'd thought they were planning a trip. Or maybe investing in something. I didn't ask. I never ask. People like me, middle children in all but birth order, we learn to read between silences. The clinking started. A few people tapped their glasses with silver knives. My grandfather stood. He looked elegant in his pressed navy blazer, the old military pin gleaming faintly under the patio lights. William Hartman wasn't just a guest. He was the backbone of this family. The kind of man whose words held weight, even when the world moved past him. "To Selena and David," he began. "May your union be strong, your love be kind, and your foundation steady. As steady as the beachside house I gave you 3 months ago." There was a pause. The wind stopped. The room stilled. I stared up at him. "What house?" I said, not loudly, not accusingly, just stunned. He chuckled lightly, eyes scanning the guests. "Oh, come on, darling. Don't tell me they haven't let you move in yet." His words dropped like stone into water. Eyes turned, heads tilted. Whispering began in corners. I could hear it. The rustle of fabric, the clink of nervous glass. My mother coughed into her napkin. My father shifted his weight. Kyle. Smiled. Smiled. I didn't move. I couldn't. My chest didn't rise, didn't fall. A house? A beachside mansion? My grandfather looked around again. "It's the one in Carpinteria. I signed it over in February. It was supposed to be your wedding gift. Did no one tell you?" His voice grew sharper. He looked at my father. "Greg, tell me this isn't what I think it is." No one answered. The silence dragged. Then he walked off, not dramatically, just disappointed. The party didn't end, but it changed. Laughter turned tight. Smiles turned plastic. I heard someone mutter, Maybe she knew. Another voice replied, "No way, look at her face." David took my hand under the table. His palm was damp. "Hey," he whispered. "Maybe this is just a mix-up. Maybe—" "Don't," I said, pulling my hand back. I could feel something hollow inside me crack open, like when you realize the version of your life you believed in was only yours. Everyone else had another script. I stood, quietly. Walked past the tables, the music, the lights. No one stopped me. Outside, the evening air was cooler. The lights from inside glowed softly through the vineyard's windows, but the sky above me was darker now, like someone had closed a curtain. I walked toward the pergola by the olive trees, the one my mother had once called too rustic for photos. I sat and thought about every little moment that made no sense before, like the time Mom told me not to visit the south side of town. "It's being renovated," she'd said, or how Kyle suddenly started wearing that new Omega watch, or the way the family avoided certain topics when I came over. I wasn't angry, not exactly. Anger is loud. This was something quieter, colder, a kind of betrayal that didn't even think it was betraying you, because it never thought of you at all. My phone buzzed. A message. From Grandpa. "Meet me tomorrow. I think they stole more than just the house." I stared at the words. My hand rested on my knee, next to the hem of my dress. The diamond ring sparkled faintly under the pergola light. I lifted it, watched it catch the dark. For the first time that night, I let the silence stay. I didn't sleep that night. I lay on top of the comforter, still in the dress, staring at the ceiling as the fan spun slowly, its blades whirring like a clock with no numbers. I watched the moonlight crawl across the wall. Then it faded. Then the sky shifted to that cold blue before sunrise. By 9:30, I was already on the road. The address Grandpa sent me led through winding canyons, past wild sage and rust-colored cliffs, until the GPS told me to turn left onto Ocean View Drive, the kind of street name you'd see in real estate brochures with glossy covers and promises no one keeps. The road narrowed. Palms lined the way, whispering in the wind. I could smell salt. I knew what this was. I just didn't know how bad it would feel. At the end of the cul-de-sac stood a Mediterranean-style mansion, white stucco walls glowing in the sunlight, soft blue roof tiles catching the sky, a tall wrought-iron gate curling like vines. There was a stone path to the beach winding just out of sight. Flowers bloomed along the front garden, bougainvillea, jasmine, and lilac. I used to say that if I ever had a house by the water, I'd grow lilacs over the front pergola. I was maybe 15 when I said that. My mother didn't answer at the time. She just nodded absently and asked my sister if she wanted more iced tea. I rolled down my window. A security guard stepped forward. He had sunglasses on and a clipboard tucked under one arm. "Morning. Name?" "Hartman," I said. He looked at the list. "Are you here to see Mr. Kyle Whitmore?" I didn't answer. My fingers tightened around the wheel. He nodded, pressed a button, and the gate creaked open. The driveway curved up, a slow incline. The tires crunched over gravel. I parked in the roundabout and stepped out, my sandals hitting the stone like I'd been here before. My hand grazed the side mirror, just to ground myself. The wind shifted. The scent of salt and lilac hit all at once. Too familiar. Too much. I walked up the steps. The double doors were already open. A woman came to greet me, tall, smooth ponytail, wearing linen like it was pressed onto her skin. "You must be Selena?" she asked. I nodded slowly. She offered a polite smile. "I'm Grace, Kyle's wife." Her voice had that polished warmth women learn at country clubs. "I didn't know he was expecting company," she said, standing aside to let me in. I stepped inside. The foyer opened into a wide space, Vaulted ceilings, clean white walls, sun streaming through tall, arched windows. Everything smelled faintly of lavender and new paint. The floors shined. The furniture was modern, soft gray and pale wood, too impersonal, like a home staged for sale. I followed her to the kitchen. There, on the marble counter, was a stack of unopened mail. A pale blue envelope caught my eye. My name was on it. Just my name. Selina Hartman. The handwriting looked like Aunt Helen's. The stamp wasn't even marked. I didn't touch it. I just looked. Grace caught the direction of my gaze. "Oh, something's got mixed in. Kyle hasn't sorted through it yet." I didn't answer, just nodded. Then I heard him. "Kyle." His voice carried down the hallway, light, casual. He walked in, wearing a silk shirt half-buttoned and holding a glass of iced coffee like he was hosting brunch. "Well, well," he said, grinning. "Didn't expect to see you here, Lena." I hadn't heard that nickname in years. He took a sip, leaned against the counter. "What brings you out this way?" he asked. I met his eyes. "Why is your name on the deed?" He blinked, then smiled wider. "Oh, so Grandpa told you." He didn't sound worried, or sorry, just amused. "You think they were ever going to let you have that kind of power?" he said, setting his glass down. "Come on, sis. You're smart, but not their favorite." "Never were." The room felt colder, even with the sun pouring in. He said it so simply, like it was just a line from a family joke, already understood by everyone but me. I didn't flinch, didn't argue. I watched his face, the small curl at the edge of his mouth. That smugness people have when they've already won something behind your back. I didn't cry. That part of me was gone. I turned slightly, looked back toward the hallway. Then, behind his chair, just under the edge of his briefcase, something caught my eye. A yellow folder, a corner barely sticking out. The label was clear, typed in all caps. Glenwood Title Transfer. I saw a date. April 12th. 2 days after Grandpa signed the gift over. I didn't reach for it. Just looked. Burned the font into my mind. My hand slipped into my bag. The soft sound of my phone camera shutter clicked once, low and quiet under Kyle's next sentence. "You really thought it was yours?" he chuckled. I turned back toward the front door. Grace was already on her phone, pretending not to notice. The mail sat untouched. My name still printed clearly on that envelope. I didn't say goodbye. The sun hit my face as I stepped outside. The air was thick with salt and memory. The gate closed behind me, and I drove away. I didn't answer right away. I just kept walking. Out the door, down the steps. The soles of my shoes felt thin against the stone path, like they weren't meant to carry the weight of what I'd just heard. By the time I got back to my car, the heat inside had already turned it into a slow oven. I didn't start it. I just sat there, holding the wheel like it was the only thing left that still belonged to me. That night, I didn't sleep again. And the next morning, I called in to work and said just one word: personal. By late morning, I was on the road again, this time headed downtown. The traffic was its usual rhythm: brake lights, turn signals, the occasional honk slicing through the hum. But inside my car, it was quiet. The kind of quiet where your own breath starts to feel loud. I parked 2 blocks from the LA County Recorder's office. The building looked tired, its cement walls stained from years of sun and smog, but inside it was cold and fluorescent. Rows of filing desks, computer terminals, tired clerks typing with the same rhythm as ticking clocks. I walked to the front desk and gave my name. The clerk barely glanced up. "Title records?" "Yes," I said. "Glenwood property, Whitmore family." Her nails clicked across the keyboard. Then she handed me a small slip of paper with a number scrawled across the top. Take this to the 3rd floor. Window 4. I nodded, held the paper like it was something holy, and found the elevator. When the doors opened on the 3rd floor, the air smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. At window 4 sat a woman with graying hair pulled into a low bun. Her glasses hung by a string around her neck. A pin on her lapel read, Ms. Gutierrez. "Can I help you, honey?" she asked, voice warm, familiar in the way only women over 60 can make you feel. I stepped closer. "I'm trying to look up some deed records. Title transfer, from a property gifted by my grandfather." Her eyes softened. "Family property fights," she murmured, more to herself than to me. "You're not the first to come looking." She stood slowly and waved for me to follow. Her steps were slow but steady as she led me down a corridor lined with cabinets. She paused at one marked Private Residential 2020 Present and unlocked it with a ring of worn brass keys. It took her a few minutes. Then she pulled a file, thick, tabbed in yellow and green, and handed it to me. "Take your time. There's a copy table down that way." I thanked her and walked to the small side room, its walls lined with microfiche readers and one lonely copier in the corner. I sat and opened the file. The top document was exactly what I expected. A grant deed dated April 10th, signed by my grandfather. The address, lot description, and name, Selina Whitmore, were all in type. Below, his signature, notarized, dated, stamped, but 2 pages later, something else. A second document. Dated April 12th, this one replaced my name with Kyle's. It looked official. Same header, same notary box. But something was wrong. I leaned in. My grandfather's signature. It wasn't the same. Similar, but not the same. Too smooth. Like someone traced it after practicing a few times. Then I turned back to the first deed. There, at the very bottom, scrawled just beneath the notary stamp, was a side clause, handwritten, not typed. "Gift is irrevocable, to be maintained in Selina Whitmore's name for full ownership within 90 days. It was signed by Grandpa, with the same pen as the signature above. The ink had bled slightly into the page. Real ink, real hand. I read it twice, 3 times. Irrevocable. And that second deed? Filed just 5 days after the original. It wasn't just dishonest, it was void. They didn't expect me to come here. They didn't expect me to look deeper. I made copies of everything, scanned the clause, zoomed in. Sent the image to myself, to 2 backup drives, to an email I hadn't used in years. Then I walked back to Mr. Gutierrez. "Thank you," I said softly. She looked up, studied my face. "Find what you needed?" "Yes," I said. "More than I thought I would." She nodded gently, like she understood. The sun was lower when I got back to my apartment. That strange LA golden hour, where everything glows but nothing feels warm. I dropped the folder on the coffee table and sat on the floor, back against the couch. Then I opened my old email, started scrolling through the saved messages from Mom. "Maybe you're just better suited to an apartment downtown. You wouldn't know what to do with that kind of space. Don't be dramatic. You've never even liked the ocean." I stared at the words, not moving. It wasn't just the house, it never was. It was all the years I'd been trained not to expect things, not to ask, not to think I could ever be someone who owned anything, not just land. Not just a home, but respect, trust, belonging. They gave me scraps and called it love, and when I didn't smile for it, they said I was ungrateful. I closed the laptop. The room felt still, my breath quiet, my palms flat against the carpet. Then I picked up my phone, searched the contacts. Grandpa's number was still saved under D, for Dad 2.0. I hadn't changed it since I was 15. I hit call. It rang. Once, twice, then voicemail. I didn't leave a message. Instead, I opened the camera app. attached the photo of the handwritten clause, typed one sentence. "Did you know they forged your signature?" Then I hit send and waited. The reply didn't come that night, or the next morning, or even the next 2 days. I tried to distract myself, sorting through work emails, folding laundry that had sat clean but untouched for a week, watering the plant by the window even though I knew it was already gone. But I kept looking at my phone, waiting. And then, 4 days after I sent that message, my screen lit up with a name I hadn't seen flash across it in nearly a year. Grandpa. Just that. I stared at it until the screen dimmed, then tapped to listen. His voice was slower now, but still carried the same weight I remembered when I was 7, and he taught me how to hold a compass, how to never walk in circles, even when it felt like you were lost. "Come by tonight. Come alone." That was it. No explanation, no warmth, but also no anger. It had been raining lightly since early afternoon. Not the dramatic kind, just a steady mist that made the world feel wrapped in gauze. The drive to Pasadena took nearly an hour. I didn't play music, didn't hum, just drove with the windows slightly cracked, the scent of wet pavement and eucalyptus mixing in the air. His neighborhood hadn't changed. The brick walls, the climbing ivy, the same creak in the gate hinge as I stepped through. Janet, the housekeeper, answered the door before I could even knock. She looked older, tired in a way I hadn't noticed before. But when she saw me, her face softened. "He's in the study, sweetheart," she said gently, stepping aside. "By the fireplace. Hasn't really moved for 2 days. Said he was waiting." I thanked her in a whisper. The hallway was dim, lit only by one old lamp near the archway. That familiar scent, aged wood, fireplace smoke, something faintly like bay rum aftershave, wrapped around me the deeper I walked into the house. The study door was slightly ajar. I pushed it open. He was there. In his worn leather armchair, one elbow resting on the chair's edge, gaze fixed on the fire like it held answers he hadn't gotten yet. He didn't turn when I entered, didn't say my name, just reached beside him, picked up a thick manila envelope, and held it out toward me without looking. I crossed the room and took it. It was labeled in small, careful handwriting, "Contingency C. Whitmore." I opened it slowly, the paper inside stiff and slightly yellowed. The first page, a living trust, dated 2 years ago, notarized, stamped, and right there, in bold type, "To Selena Whitmore, full beneficiary rights to the Malibu property and a 40% stake in the Whitmore Veterans Memorial Fund." I stared at it, blinked. He finally turned toward me then. His eyes were tired, but sharp, unforgiving, even now. "They don't know," he said. His voice didn't shake, but it was lower than I remembered. "None of them ever asked." I looked at the papers again. "This?" I whispered. "This goes beyond the house." He nodded. "I was waiting to see who would earn it," he said. "Not ask for it, not expect it handed to them just because of blood and birthdays." I couldn't hold his gaze. For a moment, all I could think of was that Christmas I skipped because I had a project deadline. The birthdays I sent cards instead of calls. The way I slowly stepped back, thinking distance would keep me safe from the old bitterness. "Why didn't you stop them?" I asked quietly. "When they filed that second deed. When they replaced me." He shifted, sighing as he leaned forward, resting his hands on his knees. "Because I needed you to see it," he said. "To know what they were willing to do, and to know what you're not." I swallowed, but the words didn't go down easy. "You think I needed to be hurt to understand?" "No," he said. "But you needed to see what they valued, and it wasn't the truth." The fire crackled between us. Outside, the wind was beginning to pick up, leaves rustling across the windows, distant thunder rolled low over the hills. I thought maybe I was imagining it, I whispered. The way they'd cut me out of pictures, out of dinners, out of decisions. He didn't respond. I ran my fingers over the edge of the trust document. My name was there, printed clean, with no erasure, no corrections. No one had tried to scratch me out here. They always said I worked too much, was too independent, didn't show up for the family. I looked up at him. Maybe I didn't. Maybe I was trying so hard to build something on my own. I stopped showing up for what mattered. He leaned back, closing his eyes briefly. You showed up when it counted. That's what matters to me. I held the papers against my chest for a moment, pressing the envelope close like it might ground me, maybe anchor me to something that still felt real. Then I looked at him. They'll fight this. You know that, right? His lips curled slightly. Of course. I don't even know where to begin. He turned then, opened the small drawer built into the armrest of his desk, pulled out a faded business card, thick cardstock, gold embossed edges. He held it between two fingers. This man represented me in '84, he said, when I needed someone who didn't blink at messy family affairs. I took the card. The name was unfamiliar, but something about the weight of the card felt old world, trusted. He doesn't lose, Grandpa said. The fire popped once, loud and sharp. We both looked toward it, then back at each other. You'll need a real lawyer now, he said, voice low. Not just guts. I nodded. But inside, the fire that had started days ago when I stood on that sidewalk in front of our family home, it was no longer a flicker. It was rising now. Quiet, slow, but steady. I didn't sleep much after the night at Grandpa's. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word he'd said, every pause between sentences. There was a finality to his voice, like he'd already passed the torch, and was just waiting to see if I'd light it. By the time morning came, I was already dressed. Coffee sat untouched on the counter. 2 days later, I stood outside a building in Brentwood, 13 stories tall with weathered limestone and windows that didn't try to impress. It felt like a place where secrets were both buried and dug back up. The brass plaque by the entrance read, Langston Wade, LLP, Private Counsel. Since 1957, I pressed the elevator button and waited. The receptionist knew who I was the second I said my name. She stood, nodded, and gestured toward a hallway behind the main desk. Mr. Langston will see you now, she said softly, like I was walking into a chapel. His office smelled like paper and leather-bound books. No sterile polish, no glass walls, just dark walnut shelves lined with dusty law journals, and one lone clock ticking too slowly above the fireplace. James Langston looked up as I entered. Early 70s, maybe. Hair silver but still thick. Calm hands, steady voice. Selina, he greeted me, like we'd spoken many times before. Have a seat. I sat down, and for a moment neither of us spoke. Then I did what I came to do. Told him everything. About the title change, the signature that didn't match mine. The way my name had vanished from the updated deed, quietly, like I'd never belonged there to begin with. Langston listened without blinking. His fingers stayed laced across a legal pad he never touched. He didn't interrupt once, not even when my voice caught for a second. When I finished, I expected him to ask for details again, to clarify, to push back gently with the usual legal caution. Instead, he looked me in the eye and said, You're not crazy. That deed's been tampered with. Someone knew exactly what they were doing and who they were stealing from. I sat back. He didn't ask me how I got the copy, didn't ask what I wanted to do. He just opened a drawer, pulled out a thick file folder and said, Let me show you something. Inside were printouts, old records from the Whitmore Estates law firm. Dates, logs, system access permissions, I recognized one of the names instantly. Kyle Whitmore. Langston tapped the page. Your cousin interned there 3 summers ago. Had full admin access to digital archives and filing systems, including the property registry portal. I blinked. You're saying he could have changed it from inside? Not just could have. He likely did. We'll know for sure soon. Langston picked up his desk phone, asked for someone named May to come in with a laptop. 15 minutes later, a woman around my age entered, carrying a plain gray case. No small talk, just opened it, booted up the system, and typed like she'd done it 100 times. Langston leaned toward me. She's the best digital forensic analyst I know. I trust her more than I trust half the judges in this county. May nodded at me, then clicked something. Her voice stayed flat. Found metadata inconsistencies on the scanned deed. Last modified timestamp doesn't match filing date. And look here. She pointed to a highlighted string of code. This version was rendered using Adobe Pro, but the original file, stored off-server in a cold backup, shows a different name in the signature field. It's yours. Kyle's name was inserted afterward. The words sank in slowly. I'd been telling myself for days I wasn't imagining it. But hearing it like that, coded, confirmed, digital proof that I had been erased on purpose, it made something go very, very still inside me. Langston stood. We'll request a freeze immediately. Within an hour, a cease and desist had been emailed to the real estate agency handling the Malibu house. The title was now frozen. No new owners, no movement, pending full court review. By that evening, my phone lit up. Voicemail from my mother. You've gone too far, Selena. This is family. This isn't how we handle things. You should have come to us first. I didn't listen all the way through. An hour later, Kyle. I can't believe you'd take it there. Legal action? Over a stupid house? You think this makes you look strong? It makes you look bitter. I saved the voicemail. Didn't reply. They'd always told me silence was weakness. But I was learning. Silence could also be power, especially when it was backed by paper and proof. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the trust documents beside me. The manila envelope was still creased at the edge where Grandpa's hand had folded it. I lit a candle. Not for any sentimental reason, just to break the darkness. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to rescue me, or explain themselves, or make it make sense. They wouldn't. But I would. Just after noon the next day, there was a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, FedEx, uniformed, holding a flat cardboard envelope and a clipboard. Signature here, he said. His eyes didn't linger. I signed, took the envelope, and closed the door. Inside, certified notice of legal arbitration, filed by Kyle Whitmore, plaintiff. 2 weeks from now, downtown courthouse. Case number already assigned. I held the paper in my hands and stared at that name. His name, not mine. But this time, I wasn't the one being erased. I sat there for a long time after the FedEx man left, just holding the notice in both hands like it might turn into something else if I stared long enough. It didn't. The name Kyle Whitmore stared back at me from the header, printed in perfect black ink. Beneath it, the words, petitioner, requesting arbitration to resolve disputed ownership of the Malibu property, so he'd gone and done it. Filed first. Claimed the offense. I should have been surprised. But all I felt was the quiet weight of inevitability. Like a train I'd seen coming from miles away had finally arrived. Right on schedule. 2 weeks passed in a slow blur. I kept busy. Or at least I pretended to. Sorted old files, cleaned corners I hadn't touched in years, lit candles I didn't need, cooked full meals I barely touched. Every little task felt like armor, something between me and the next battle. And then it was the morning of. I got dressed slow, chose dark blue slacks, a blazer that still held shape. I tied my hair back with the black satin ribbon I always used when I needed to feel steady, the one thing my mother had never thrown out when I left. Funny, the things you hold on to, even when the person who gave them stopped seeing you. The office building in Century City stood tall but unremarkable. No flashy signs, just another silent tower with too much glass and not enough warmth. Security let me through after checking my name on the list. They handed me a guest badge and pointed toward the elevators, conference room 17B, 11th floor. The hallway outside was cold, air conditioning set too high for comfort. Or maybe it was just me. Inside, the room stretched long, sterile, gray walls, one large oval table with 12 high-backed chairs and a carafe of untouched water at the center. 3 arbitrators sat near the head, suits neutral, eyes unreadable. On one side, Kyle and his attorney, some smug man with a pastel tie and a pen he kept twirling like a nervous tick. My mother sat beside them, arms folded across her chest, hair fixed, makeup perfect, face frozen in something halfway between disapproval and disdain. She didn't look at me. Not once. Langston took the seat beside me, calm as ever. His presence was a small comfort, a reminder that I wasn't walking into this alone. Still, I felt the emptiness where Grandpa should have been, the quiet ache of it. I'd called him twice in the last week. No answer. Left messages. I wasn't sure if it was age or choice. Maybe both. The lead arbitrator spoke first. Introduced the session. Reviewed the structure. Set expectations about tone, evidence, procedure. And then he looked at Kyle. "You may begin." Kyle stood. He cleared his throat like he was stepping on stage, straightened his tie, wore the smugness like a second skin. "Thank you," he began. "I appreciate everyone's time. This isn't easy. But when someone behaves erratically, when they lash out and put the family legacy at risk, someone has to step in." I didn't blink. He continued. "I never wanted this, but I've watched my cousin spiral. She's made irrational decisions, questioned everyone's motives, and accused us, her own blood, of conspiracy." He paused for effect, then held up a folder. "These are messages Selena sent to me and others. I'd like to submit them into evidence." The arbitrator nodded. Kyle's attorney stood, handed copies across the table. I looked down, printed screenshots, dozens of them. At first glance, they looked familiar. My name, my avatar, the tone. But something was off. Words I never used. Phrasing too sharp, too cruel. One message read, "I'll sell that house just to watch it burn. Grandpa's too senile to stop me." Another, "I never cared about family. I just want what's mine. They can rot." Gasps echoed softly in the room. The arbitrator looked up. "Miss Whitmore, would you like to respond?" I swallowed. "That's not me," I said, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. "I never wrote those." Kyle smiled like he already won. "I have the full logs, Your Honor. Metadata, timestamps." Langston stood slowly. "With respect, we'd like to reserve full rebuttal until later in the session." The arbitrator nodded. We moved on to procedures, legal positioning, chain of custody. I barely heard it. All I could think about was those words, the way my mother looked at the printouts like they confirmed every suspicion she'd ever whispered behind closed doors. I kept thinking, he came prepared. He had help. He's playing the long game. I felt tired. And then, just before the break, the door creaked open. Everyone turned. Grandpa. He stood in the doorway, a little bent but steady, holding his cane in one hand and a small black flash drive in the other. Langston nodded toward him, but Grandpa didn't look at anyone but me. I stood. He walked over. No words. Just placed the drive in Langston's hand and then sat down slowly beside me, in the chair left open. Then he finally spoke. "Let's all stop pretending." His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the air like it had teeth. "I may be old, but I'm not blind, and I've got ears in places you wouldn't believe." He looked at Kyle. "You think the world doesn't talk when you think it's not listening? You think no one sees you brag over drinks with lawyers? Or record the mess you leave behind?" The room fell so still, it hummed. Langston plugged the drive into his laptop, turned it toward the arbitrators. Hit play. The first voice was unmistakably Kyle's, casual, cocky, laughing. "All I did was swap a file and boom, she's off crying in her little condo. Easiest con I ever pulled." Someone at the table sucked in a breath. Another clip. Different location. Same voice. "She was never gonna do anything. Selena's soft. Always was. Give her a little scare. She folds." Langston let the recordings play, one by one. Then came the screenshots. Real ones. Messages I actually sent Grandpa. "Are you sure you're okay signing this? I just want you to be comfortable. I'm not rushing anything. This place means more to you than anyone. I love you. You're the only one who's ever really seen me." My throat tightened, but I didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Kyle looked pale, paler than I'd ever seen him. His attorney leaned in, whispering fast. My mother sat stiff as marble. The lead arbitrator leaned forward. "We'll reconvene tomorrow for final statements. But I'll say this. Truth has a strange way of surfacing." He didn't look at anyone in particular, but I felt it. And for the first time in that cold room, I felt like I wasn't the one on trial anymore. Truth has a strange way of surfacing. The room had emptied out, one by one, the lawyers, the assistants, even Kyle, like smoke fading after a fire. Only Langston and I stayed behind. I didn't want to move just yet. The seat beside me still held the warmth where Grandpa had sat minutes ago. Langston leaned toward me, his voice soft, steady. "You okay?" I nodded, even though the answer was more complicated than that. My hands rested flat on the table, still remembering the chill of printed lies and the weight of a flash drive that changed everything. Outside, the light had shifted, late afternoon creeping into early evening. The world didn't know yet that something had broken in here and reset. We returned the next day. Same building, same elevator, same gray conference room. But something felt different. Kyle was already seated when I walked in. He didn't look at me. His tie was loose this time, the corners of his mouth tight like he hadn't slept. My mother wasn't there. I wondered if she was avoiding the embarrassment, or if she'd simply stopped pretending to care. Langston and I took our places quietly. The panel of arbitrators came in right at 2. No small talk, no wasted motion. The lead arbitrator cleared his throat and looked down at the document in front of him. "This arbitration board," he began, "has reviewed all submitted evidence, including digital communications, forensic testimony, and living witness statements. After careful deliberation..." He paused for a beat. Kyle shifted in his seat. "We find that the living trust dated March 14th remains valid and binding. All subsequent documents have been deemed inadmissible due to proven tampering and undue influence." He looked up. "All property rights pertaining to the residents at Sandbar Cove are to revert to Selena Whitmore, effective immediately." My breath caught, not in triumph, but in relief. A quiet kind. The kind you don't show. Because the battle might be over, but the wounds are still fresh underneath. Kyle muttered something under his breath. The arbitrator raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" Kyle straightened in his chair. "This was rigged," he hissed, louder now. "She had help, manipulated my grandfather, played the victim." I stood before Langston could stop me. No, I said, voice low but clear. What I did was protect what was already mine. What you did, that was theft dressed up in family. He didn't respond, just stared back, jaw tight, like he still couldn't believe any of this was happening. I didn't wait for the rest. I turned and walked out. Langston caught up with me in the hallway, his hand brushing lightly against my shoulder. You handled that well. I didn't do it for applause, I said. He smiled a little. I know. We stepped out onto the courthouse plaza, sunlight blinking off parked cars and high windows. A breeze picked up, soft against my face. It smelled like salt air and the faint hint of someone's cologne. And then, slowly, I heard his cane tap behind us. Grandpa. He moved slowly, carefully, but his back was straighter than I'd seen it in months. He came up beside me and looked out at the horizon, like it wasn't just buildings and traffic, but something more. He smiled. You fought well, he said quietly. I always hoped it'd be you. My throat clenched. There were so many things I wanted to say. Thank you. I'm sorry. I never wanted this to hurt you. But all I managed was a soft nod. He reached for my hand. We should get lunch, he said. I feel like celebrating. Anything you want. He chuckled. Anything? That cafe on Jefferson still make that terrible roast beef sandwich I like? I smiled. If they do, I'll make sure they save too. As we started walking toward the valet station, he leaned heavier on my arm. I slowed to match his steps. He stumbled slightly on the curb, and I caught him before he could fall. He waved it off. Just a moment, he murmured. These legs are older than you think. I didn't let go. The sun hung low over the western sky, casting long shadows across the pavement. We were almost to the valet desk when I felt the shift. His fingers twitched in mine. His weight sank suddenly, too fast. Grandpa? He didn't answer. He collapsed hard, knees giving out as if someone had pulled the floor from beneath him. His cane clattered to the ground. I dropped beside him. Call an ambulance, I yelled. People turned. A woman screamed. A man in a suit rushed to pull out his phone. Langston knelt beside me, already dialing. I gripped Grandpa's hand. His face had gone pale, lips tinged blue. His eyes blinked, then slowly found mine. Stay with me, okay? I whispered. Just stay. Please. He squeezed my fingers. Barely. His voice came out like wind over gravel. Make it yours, he gasped. Make it right. And then, nothing. Sirens. I heard them before I saw the ambulance. The flashing red lights splashed across glass doors and parked cars. EMTs shouted, hands moving fast, lifting him onto the gurney. Oxygen. Chest compressions. Words I couldn't make sense of. I stood back. Powerless. Langston's hand touched my shoulder again. Come on, he said gently. But I couldn't move. Because the man who'd just handed me back a life I almost lost was now being taken away. And for all I'd gained, it suddenly felt like I was losing the only part that ever really mattered. And they told me he didn't suffer, that he went quickly, peacefully. But I don't think peace feels like that. Like standing in a hospital hallway with cold coffee in one hand and his cane in the other, while a nurse apologizes for the paperwork delay. I don't think peace echoes like footsteps leaving you behind. It's been a week. The sky this morning was gray before the sun even rose, the kind of gray that feels heavy. Langston pulled up in front of the cemetery at exactly 9:58. I heard the tires crunch the gravel before I looked up. He didn't say much, just opened the door and waited. There weren't many people, just Langston. two of Grandpa's old Navy buddies, both wearing faded pins and proud stares. A neighbor from the beach house, holding a casserole dish in her lap, like she didn't know what else to do with her hands. No Kyle, no Mom, of course not. I stood beside the casket, arms wrapped around myself, not from the cold, but from something colder. They played taps. The notes cut through the still morning like someone slicing through cloth. My hands shook, but I didn't cry. Grief looks different after everything. Langston placed a folded flag into my hands. He did it slowly, gently, like it might break. "I wish it didn't have to be this way," he said, his voice low. I didn't answer, because wishing never changed much for us. The service didn't last long. The older men saluted and left without a word. The neighbor gave me the casserole and a tight hug. Langston asked if I wanted him to drive me home. I told him I needed to go somewhere first. And I did. Not the house I grew up in. Not the condo I rent near downtown. I drove back to the beach house, the one place that still smelled like him. By the time I got there, it had started to rain, light at first, then steady. I sat in the car a few minutes, watching the water beat along the windshield. My hand hovered over the key before I finally opened the door. The house greeted me with silence. No lights, no heat. Just that hollow, echoing stillness that only exists after someone leaves for good. I walked in slowly, leaving my shoes by the door like he always asked. The hardwood floor was cool under my socks. I moved through each room like I was walking through a museum of us. The living room still had his blanket draped over the couch, the one I used to steal on cold mornings. I touched it, but didn't pick it up. In the kitchen, the last mug he used was still upside down on the drying rack. I ran my fingers along its edge, navy blue, chipped at the rim. I drifted upstairs. His room smelled like cedar and old cologne. I stood in the doorway for a moment. I couldn't go in. Not yet. Instead, I turned toward the study. He always called it the thinking room. Books lined the shelves, war memoirs, maps, old novels with yellowing pages. His desk sat by the window, clean except for a pen holder and a small brass lamp. And one drawer, I stared at it. There was a sticker on the front, faded, curling at the edges. It read, "Only for her." I knew it was meant for me. Somehow, I just knew. My fingers hesitated over the handle. Then I pulled. Inside was a single envelope, thick and sealed with wax. My name, written in his hand, sat at the center. I sat down before opening it. The letter unfolded in slow creases. The paper felt heavy, like it carried more than ink. If you're reading this, then my time ran out before I could give you what I always meant to. Not just a home, a name, a future. Everything I have, my company shares, the beach house, the Arizona vineyard, goes to you. You are my legacy. He had signed it. Below his name were notarized documents, legal, stamped, dated just a month ago, a new trust agreement, a revised deed. My hands trembled again, but not from grief this time, from something else, the weight of being seen. I sat there for a long time, reading, rereading, memorizing the way he looped his L's, the way he ended every sentence with a period, like he still believed in structure, in order. When I finally stood, the sky outside had turned gold behind the rain. I stepped through the back door and onto the patio, still clutching the envelope. The wind smelled of ocean and wet eucalyptus. The waves were calm. I walked to the edge, where the railing framed the water just like he always said, a picture worth sitting still for. I rested my hand on the wood. The grain was smooth under my palm. Familiar. I thought about all the times I'd sat there with him. Quiet mornings, late nights, no expectations, no pressure, just time. And I whispered into the wind, Not loudly, just enough for the house to hear. "You didn't just leave me a house. You gave me back my voice." The wind stirred my hair. The waves didn't stop. And neither did I. Langston didn't leave until I nodded. I watched his truck disappear down the gravel drive, the sound of its tires swallowed by wind and waves. Then I turned back toward the house, the flag still folded in my arms, the envelope tucked against my chest like something sacred. That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. I lay in Grandpa's bed. Not to take his place, but to be near what was left. His smell lingered on the pillow. Faint, but enough. I didn't cry. Just let the quiet settle over me like a blanket. Somewhere in the darkness I whispered, "I'll take care of it now." 2 months passed. The house didn't stay frozen in time. I didn't let it. Bit by bit, I peeled away the heaviness. The drapes came down. Light returned. I repainted the walls in warm colors, honey, clay, soft olive. Not the sterile whites Grandpa had preferred. The silence, too, changed texture. It no longer echoed. It hummed. I didn't hire a decorator. I worked with my hands, sanding old banisters, oiling the porch swing, learning how to fix plumbing with YouTube tutorials and stubborn determination. I kept the blanket on the couch. I just mended the torn edge with blue thread. He wouldn't have minded. He always said things didn't need to be perfect, just honest. That morning, the doorbell rang. I opened it barefoot, still holding a cup of tea. The breeze carried in salt air and jasmine. On the porch step sat a bouquet of orange ranunculus in a mason jar and a note tucked beside them. "Still watching the tide for you. Proud. L." I smiled. Set the jar on the entry table, next to the shell Grandpa and I once found after a storm. Walked barefoot across the floor I'd scrubbed clean myself, each plank now glowing softly in the morning sun. The house felt warm, lived in, loved, not haunted. Later that afternoon, I changed into a simple navy dress and tied my hair back. I glanced in the mirror, still me, just steadier. I grabbed the small folder from the side table, slipped it into my bag, and drove toward town. The community center sat at the edge of the bluff, just beyond the old diner, newly painted, freshly landscaped, a space for everyone, young kids, veterans, the lonely. The money from the Arizona vineyard went here, quietly, no press, no plaque with my name, but they'd asked me to speak. I didn't plan anything grand, just the truth. When it was my turn, I stepped behind the modest podium, cleared my throat once. My grandfather used to say, "You carry your name on your back. Walk steady." Some people smiled. A few looked down. Sometimes the family you're born into breaks you, but the legacy you build with grace, that's unshakable. The room was quiet at first. Then a slow ripple of applause. Nothing loud, nothing staged, just real. I saw a few older men nod, caps in their laps, medals pinned neatly on jackets. They didn't say much, but their eyes met mine. And I knew. When I got home, the sky had turned soft, the kind of pale pink that only appears in coastal dusk. I parked the car, kicked off my flats near the door. Just as I reached for the handle, I heard it, a knock at the side gate. I wasn't expecting anyone. I crossed the porch and stepped outside. The air was cooler now. Standing on the other side of the gate, awkward and uncertain, was a girl, maybe 17. Hair in a loose braid, backpack slung over one shoulder. I recognized the eyes. Kyle's daughter. She didn't smile, just looked at me straight. "He told me you were the enemy," she said quietly. "That you were selfish, that you ruined everything. But he never looked me in the eye when he said it. I wanted to see for myself. I didn't move. I just watched her." She hesitated. "I don't want anything. I don't think he told the truth." I thought of the key, still under the mat. "The one Grandpa used to joke about, just in case someone honest ever knocks." I bent down slowly, lifted the mat, picked it up and placed it gently in her hand. "When you're ready," I said. She blinked, clutched it, nodded. I turned back inside without waiting for thanks. That evening, I sat on the back balcony. The sun sank low, casting golden ribbons across the water. I traced the letters on the small metal plaque I'd just finished mounting to the gate. C. Whitmore. Heir by honor. The wind stirred lightly. I sipped my tea, let the salt air settle into my lungs. Closed my eyes. I never needed their approval. Just a little space to breathe, to rebuild, to be. Sometimes that's enough. Sometimes it's everything. Have you ever discovered a truth that shattered everything, but set you free? Tell me in the comments. I read every one.